I. I'm going to transfer schools. Iris's eyes widened at my words. Then, a sad expression appeared on her face. No, it can't be. Seeing her reaction, I decided to go for it. I ripped the second button off my uniform. It's a year early, but please take it. I held the second button tightly in my fist and extended it toward her. I looked straight at Iris. Iris brought her hand to her mouth and then shed tears. I'm sorry. I was completely shocked. My name is Harry. I'm 30 years old. Currently, I'm outside, having stepped out of my high school reunion for a moment. Our high school has an interesting tradition. When graduates turn 30, a reunion is held in the school gym. The current students prepare for it. It starts in the evening and goes on until night. Simple snacks are provided, but generally, each alumnus brings something. Alcohol is not allowed. I've been having a great time with my friends, reminiscing and enjoying ourselves. But the person I really want to see is still surrounded by people, and I haven't had a chance to talk to her yet. So nostalgic. Standing in front of the big cherry tree next to the gym, I reminisced about my high school days. In high school, I was an average student. I didn't study much for tests. Just by listening in class, I could score around 80. For me, not having high aspirations, it was a satisfactory score. One day, I had forgotten to bring a homework assignment that was due that day, so I went home to get it. Walking down the hallway to the staff room, I saw a girl looking worried. It was Iris. She was at the top of our class every year and was also very pretty. She was flawless. She was someone I thought I'd never have any connection with. No way, has Mr. Austin already left? She mentioned the math teacher's name with a troubled look. The teacher she asked offered to call another math teacher, but she shook her head and turned to leave, passing by me. A pleasant, floral scent wafted in the air. It was probably her shampoo or conditioner. Feeling a bit lucky, I went into the staff room, handed in my assignment, got a bit of a lecture, and then left. Walking down the hallway, I saw something on the floor. I picked it up and realized it was a student ID. It had Iris written on it. I checked the shoe lockers and saw her shoes were still there. This meant she was still in the school. I debated leaving the student ID in the shoe locker and going home. But it felt a bit wrong, so I headed toward the classroom. I was in class 1, she was in class 3. I decided to check the classrooms and the library, and if I didn't find her, I would leave the ID in the shoe locker. Peeking into class 3, I saw Iris with her head in her hands. I quietly entered the classroom and said, She looked up at me. Her eyes were shining with tears. Iris quickly wiped them away and looked at me. What? Pretending not to notice her tears, I walked over and placed the student ID on her desk. I found this. Oh, I dropped it. Thank you. Iris examined the student ID and thanked me. No problem, I'm glad you were still here. Just as I was about to leave, a paper on her desk caught my eye. Math? When I asked, Iris nodded. I just can't figure it out. The paper wasn't the usual school handout but a plain white sheet. It's not a school assignment, is it? Iris nodded. It's homework from my cram school. A quick glance revealed that the problems looked tough. Why don't you ask your cram school teacher if you don't understand? When I offered this sensible suggestion, her face clouded over. My dad checks it before I go. If I can't solve it, he gets mad. So that's what it's like to be the parent of the top student. I was impressed. So you were looking for Mr. Austin, the math teacher. Couldn't another teacher help? I asked out of genuine curiosity, and she looked down a bit. I'm scared of teachers I don't know. Indeed, we rarely interacted with teachers from other grades, and they did seem a bit intimidating. A silence fell between us. I thought about just leaving. But I couldn't ignore the worried look on her face. Can I take a look? Iris looked at me skeptically. Her expression seemed to say, there's no way you can solve it. But I was good at math. The problem involved inequalities and was a word problem. It was quite complex. Thinking it through in my head was tricky. Do you mind if I use the blackboard? I walked over to the blackboard and started writing equations with the chalk. Wait, This method won't work. Oh, I need to set up the equation from the conclusion? Muttering to myself. I solved it in about 3 minutes. Does this look right? Iris tilted her head. I don't know, there's no answer key. How did you solve it? Iris, still sitting at her desk, came over to the blackboard and stood next to me. The same pleasant scent from earlier made my heart race a little. Well, you see. I explained the equations on the blackboard, and her face lit up. Her smile made my teenage heart flutter. Wow. I get it. I think that's correct. Amazing. As I was admiring her smile, she took my hand. Thank you. Harry. Thank you. You're really smart to solve a problem like this. She read my name embroidered on my chest pocket, thanked me, and complimented me. Then Iris looked at the clock. Oh no. It's already this late. I have to go, or I'll get in trouble. See you, Harry. Help me again if I need it. She said this quickly and hurried out of the classroom. I stood there, feeling the lingering warmth of her hand, unable to move for a while. Though my motivation was impure, I started studying hard from that day on, so that I could answer any question Iris might ask me. However, since she rarely had trouble, my efforts were mostly in vain, but my grades skyrocketed. Even so, I never reached the top of the class. I was not good at Japanese and social studies. In our second year, we ended up in the same class. We didn't talk much, but during the committee selection in April, I was nominated for vice chair. And Iris was nominated for chair. I accepted the nomination for vice chair, somewhat reluctantly, while Iris took the role of chair as if it were natural. She seemed to care about her report card. One day, when I was late because of the committee meeting, I decided to ask her something I had been wondering about. Hey, why do you always work so hard? She frowned. It's not a happy story. I nodded. Even if it wasn't happy, I wanted to know her reason. My parents are bureaucrats who graduated from Tokyo University. My eyes widened. That's amazing. Lacking vocabulary, that was all I could say. Isn't it? My older brother is also very smart. When I heard the name of the high school her brother attended, I was even more surprised. That's the top school in the prefecture. Iris nodded. I want to go to the same high school as my brother, then go to Tokyo University, and eventually marry someone who graduated from Tokyo University. Otherwise, I'll be abandoned. Despite being naturally bright, she worked hard every day. I understand aiming for Tokyo University, but planning to marry someone from there, isn't that a bit early to think about? I said, and she smiled wryly. Yeah, I guess. But I'd been told that all my life, if I don't find someone from there, I can't get married. There was a hint of self-deprecation in her laugh. What about universities better than Tokyo University? I asked, and she furrowed her eyebrows. It's the best university in Japan, you know? I laughed at her words. True, but what about abroad? Like Harvard, Stanford, or Oxford? Iris's eyes widened at my words. I never thought about that. I smiled slightly. I don't think education is everything. If your perspective is narrow, your future choices will be limited too. Iris gave a faint smile. Yeah, but for now, my goal is Tokyo University. I want to become a bureaucrat and support the country from behind the scenes like my parents. I was amazed at her grand dream. Then maybe I'll go to Harvard and become a politician, eventually the prime minister. Would that satisfy Iris's parents? Just kidding. Iris blushed slightly at my casual remark. Does that mean? Just as the atmosphere was getting a bit romantic. Hey! It's time to go home. A teacher who had spotted us called out from a distance. We quickly responded, and my moment of courage was left unresolved as we headed home. From then on, we remained more than friends but less than lovers. Or so I thought. At least, that was my perception at the time. In the second term, we continued as chair and vice chair, occasionally studying together after school. While I mostly hung out with boys and Iris with girls, the girl I talked to the most was Iris. And I believe I was the boy she talked to the most as well. On days with committee meetings, we would leave school together, walk out the gate, and part ways at the first intersection. From there, we headed in different directions. If only we were closer to each other's homes. There were times when I thought that. One day, as we were about to head home together, Iris glanced at the cherry tree next to the gym. Hey, did you know? There's a legend that couples who exchange the ribbon of a girl's school uniform and the second button of a boy's under this cherry tree on graduation day will get married. Not being familiar with such superstitions, I was genuinely intrigued. Wow, marriage, huh? So this cherry tree must be really popular on graduation day. At our middle school graduation ceremony, the second-year students attended as current students, but the first-year students stayed home. I thought I would check out the cherry tree after the graduation ceremony, but Iris shook her head. Actually, today's students are too shy to do that publicly. It's kind of sad. She glanced at me. If someone did something that romantic, even if I didn't like him, I'd probably say yes. My heart skipped a beat. Could this mean I should get my hopes up? Is she subtly telling me to invite her under the cherry tree on graduation day? If so, I needed to study even harder to get into Harvard. After all, her parents wouldn't approve of anyone less than a Tokyo University graduate. To make a promise under the cherry tree on graduation day, I had to get into Harvard. Motivated by this impure intention, I threw myself into my studies even more. However, those days came to an abrupt end. My father was transferred. It was a transfer to a city far away from my hometown. I found out at the end of my second year, on the first day of March. I realized I would no longer see Iris. When my father told me about the transfer, my vision went dark for a moment. But I'm going to confess. I made up my mind. On the day of the third-year graduation ceremony. After the ceremony, we, the second-year students, clean up the gym. Then, I would walk home with her and give her the second button. I nervously prepared for the graduation ceremony, spent the ceremony feeling anxious. Finally, after the ceremony, during the cleanup, I lied, "Could you help me with some studying afterward, to stay a bit longer at school?" Once all the students were gone, we left. Passing by the cherry tree, I suddenly stopped. Iris, who was walking ahead, turned around. "What's wrong?" My heart was racing. "I'm transferring." Iris's eyes widened at my words. Then, her expression turned sad. "No, it can't be." Seeing her reaction, I decided to go for it. I ripped the second button off my uniform. "It's a year early, but please take this." I held the second button tightly in my fist and extended it toward her. I looked straight at Iris. Iris brought her hand to her mouth, and tears started to flow. "I'm sorry." I was completely shocked. Hadn't she implied that if I confessed, she might say yes even if she didn't like me? Was it because it wasn't the actual graduation day? My thoughts were spinning, but I managed to speak. "Oh. I see. I'm sorry." Iris, seeing my distress, looked troubled. "I'm sorry, but..." She seemed to be searching for a reason to reject me. Part of me wanted to know, but part of me didn't. For her sake, I should let go. I knew that. But even though I had been rejected, I wanted to stay with her a bit longer. Iris glanced at the gym. "Did you know that every year, the graduates from here have a reunion when they turn 30? The conversation took a strange turn, and I was puzzled. "Huh? Oh, yeah, I know, we have to help with the preparations, so, what about it?" I looked at Iris, but she kept her gaze on the gym. "When we're 30, if we're both still single." She paused and then looked directly at me. "Let's exchange then." She gave me a big smile. "I'm definitely going to Tokyo University, so..." "Harry, you go to Harvard." "Promise." This promise made me feel like we had formed a bond. "Got it. Iris. I'll make it happen." We walked home. It was a bit awkward, but I spent the remaining days before my transfer just like normal with Iris. They are very precious memories. And now, here I am at 30, standing under the cherry tree. As I reminisced, I heard the sound of heels approaching. Turning around, I saw Iris walking toward me in a blue dress. "Iris." The wind gently rustled her dress. I finally managed to get away. She gave a slight smile. You achieved your dream. You went to Tokyo University, became a bureaucrat, and even became Miss Tokyo University? Congratulations. I said this with a gentle smile, and Iris responded with a soft laugh. Thank you. It's been hectic, but I'm doing well. How about you? I haven't heard a thing about you. I even asked everyone about Harry. But no one knew anything. I looked down a bit. I'd been keeping my background hidden. Iris tilted her head. Why? I hesitated a bit but answered honestly. When I say I'm from Harvard, people's reactions change, and it makes me uncomfortable. Iris's eyes widened. So, you really went to Harvard? I slowly nodded. Yes, I had also fulfilled my middle school dream. After intense studying, I got into the top high school in the area, and during high school, I actively participated in events that allowed me to communicate with people from abroad. My 3 years of hard work paid off, and I was awarded a scholarship to Harvard University. College life was stimulating. Everything I saw and heard was full of energy. Having achieved my goal of getting into Harvard, I went through a period of feeling aimless. As I attended university, more and more things I wanted to do kept coming to mind. Among these thoughts, Iris was always on my mind. Iris, who wanted to become a bureaucrat and work for the country. What could I do for my country? I had thought about becoming a politician back in middle school. But I realized it wasn't for me. One person's power alone isn't enough. What could be the pillars supporting the country? As I pondered this, an idea came to me. I graduated from Harvard and returned to Japan. Now, I work as a business consultant during the day and run a non-profit organization that provides free tutoring to children at night. Iris's eyes widened at my words. The foundation of a country's support is its tax revenue, right? For that revenue to increase, businesses need to earn more. That's why I work as a consultant. And at night, I run a tutoring center for children who can't afford to study properly. These kids will shape the future of Japan. Iris gave a small applause. That's amazing, truly wonderful. Her words made me blush. Then, I pulled something out of my pocket. I haven't asked if you're seeing someone. I can't imagine a Miss Tokyo University being single. But today, I want you to take this. I extended my fist toward Iris. She held out her right hand beneath my fist. Out of my fist fell the second button from my middle school uniform. The button she once refused to accept. After that failed confession, I couldn't bring myself to put it back on my uniform, so I kept it with care all these years. I remembered how I had attached a spare button in place of the second one so my parents wouldn't notice. Thank you. I'm happy. Maybe she didn't have a boyfriend. Maybe we could finally become a couple. Filled with hope, I saw Iris smirk. But my ribbon. I won't give it to you that easily. Her unexpected response made me brace myself. If you can answer 4 of my questions correctly, I'll give it to you. The unexpected twist left me bewildered. First question. Leaving me stunned, Iris posed her first question. What do you think of the current politics in Japan? I was taken aback. Does that even have a right answer? At my question, Iris tilted her head and smiled. She didn't seem interested in answering. I shared my opinion with her. Iris smiled, seemingly satisfied. Okay, second question. What's the solution to global warming? Another tough question. It was a huge challenge. Thinking hard and recalling what I learned in university, I managed to come up with an answer. Iris nodded along. It was hard to tell if I was right or wrong. Alright, third question. Once again, it was a question with no clear right answer. And then. Okay, the fourth question. Iris looked up at me. How many guys have I dated so far? The sudden change in direction of the question threw me off. Well. I hoped the answer was 0. But that was unlikely. She was Miss Tokyo University, after all. She was pretty, with excellent communication skills. 1. I'd be jealous of that guy. If it were more, I wouldn't like that either. You have 10 seconds left. The sudden time limit made me panic. 3. Iris made a dramatic frown. Wrong. Now you're out of chances. Here's the final question. She didn't tell me the correct answer. While I was bewildered, Iris took a step closer to me. Do I still love you? Her question made my heart race. What did she mean by still? Had she ever liked me before? I had confessed before transferring, but she rejected me. However, she left the possibility open for when we turned 30. I gathered my courage. Yes. I stammered a bit but looked straight at Iris and answered. Iris stared at me without changing her expression. Final answer? With a mischievous look, she dragged out the moment. What was the answer? My heart was pounding loudly. I wanted the answer quickly. As I swallowed nervously, Iris broke into a smile. Then, she extended her left hand to me. In her palm was her ribbon. I guess I'm actually quite loyal and innocent. The answer to the fourth question is 0. Hearing her answer, I couldn't hold back any longer. I wrapped my arms around Iris. She also put her arms around my back. I'm sorry I couldn't respond back in middle school. I thought a long-distance relationship would be impossible for me. I was overwhelmed with studying, and even then, it was hard to focus while harboring my first crush. Hearing first crush, my heart skipped a beat. Your first crush was me? In my arms, Iris nodded. Kind, hardworking, and we got along so well. You were the only boy who casually said. Then I'll aim for Harvard when I hinted that I wouldn't date anyone less than a Tokyo University graduate. My heart raced. But, as Miss Tokyo University, didn't you have a lot of suitors? Wasn't there anyone good at Tokyo University? I asked, and Iris laughed. Of course, there were many. But I couldn't forget you, who aimed for Harvard for me. What about you? Didn't girls flock to you once they knew you were from Harvard? Those blonde beauties there? I chuckled at her question. There were girls, even if I wasn't noticed by blonde beauties, when I returned home and people knew I was from Harvard. Both men and women treated me differently. But like I said, I hated that, so I usually kept it hidden. I only mentioned it when necessary for work. I took a deep breath. Until I turned 30 and reunited with you, I made sure I didn't develop feelings for anyone else. Iris giggled. So, what if I rejected you? I laughed. Then I'd flaunt my Harvard background and have a blast. Iris laughed heartily at my joke. Then you'll never get to play around. Is that okay? I tightened my arms around her. Of course. You're the only woman I want to be with forever. We hugged in silence for a while. Then, congratulations, someone shouted, causing the surrounding crowd to cheer. Turning around, I saw a large group of people gathered at the gym entrance. It seemed we had been watched. Since when, I wondered. Well, of course, if Miss Tokyo University doesn't come back for a while, everyone would be worried and look outside. It was obvious, but we hadn't noticed and spent the time as if we were alone. I felt embarrassed, my face burning. Suddenly, there was a chant for a kiss. Was it okay to do this? In front of everyone. Under the sacred cherry tree of our middle school. I tried to avoid it, but Iris whispered. If you don't, we won't be able to calm them down. Iris looked down shyly, and I found her irresistibly cute. So, in front of everyone, under the sacred cherry tree of our middle school, I gave Iris a light kiss. Years have passed since then. Iris and I got married. A year later, we were blessed with a child, expanding our family. 3 years later, we had another child, making us a family of 4 now. I've expanded my NPO tutoring program nationwide and also offer it online while continuing in-person sessions. Many children from low-income families seek a place where they belong. I hope to provide that place for them. Iris is busy every day as a bureaucrat. Iris often comes home late at night, so I worry about her health. I try my best to cook a warm dinner for her, filled with love so that she can eat when she gets home. Iris takes care of breakfast. The breakfast she makes is my best source of energy for the day. Sometimes, as I look at our sleeping children, I wonder, What kind of adults will they become? Their father went to Harvard, and their mother went to Tokyo University. I hope they don't feel any undue pressure because of that. After all, their future is wide open. I want them to become whatever they want to be without narrowing their choices. And once they decide what they want to become, I want to support them with all my might as a parent. The same goes for the children who come to our tutoring program. If they find a dream, I want to help them achieve it with all my might. As I thought about these things while watching my children sleep, I heard a faint sound from the entrance. Iris had come home quietly so as not to wake the children. I quietly left the children's room and headed to the kitchen to warm up dinner for Iris. I felt the same way she did. Despite it being our first meeting, we got along perfectly. I'm Henry, a 38-year-old single man. I've been working as a French lecturer at a private college, and recently, I was promoted to associate professor. My fascination with France began when I read a biography of Napoleon in elementary school. I still vividly remember being thrilled as a child by Napoleon's journey from his small island of Corsica to become an emperor through hard work. During my college years, I visited France for the first time through a homestay program. Seeing the Palace of Versailles, where Napoleon held his coronation, felt like a scene from history coming to life. Unable to forget that moment, I went on to graduate school and began researching the history of the French Revolution. Currently, while continuing my research, I teach French to students. Even during the summer break, I'm busy writing papers every day. However, since my sister and her husband's restaurant is busiest during this time, I help out there on Friday and Saturday nights during the summer break. My sister, Emily, who is 5 years younger than me, worriedly asked, "Are you sure it's okay to help us with the new semester preparations coming up?" Yes, it's fine. Sitting and writing papers all the time can get overwhelming, so it's a good change of pace to move around. Plus, I owe you and Nate so much, let me repay you sometimes. Actually, Nate, my sister's husband, has been my best friend since college and has always looked out for me even after marrying Emily. Knowing I tend to neglect my diet due to my busy work schedule, Nate often brings me delicious food, for which I am truly grateful. When I expressed my gratitude, Emily smiled warmly and said, "Thank you." Wanting to help Emily and Nate as much as possible, I happily assisted at the restaurant, but in reality, I was troubled by a certain male customer. This man, named George, who was the same age as me, visited the restaurant every Friday evening. As soon as he burst through the door and spotted Emily, he loudly called out to her, "Here I am again. By the way, every time I come here, there are hardly any customers. Are you sure the business is doing all right?" Our restaurant is a small place with 4 tables and 5 seats by the counter, and at that time, George was the only customer. Other regulars had started coming at different times to avoid George's noisy visits on Friday evenings. Of course, we couldn't say that to George, so Emily responded with a polite smile, "Thanks to you, we are doing fine." Not wanting to burden Emily with George any longer, I suggested she move to the kitchen, and I took George's order. "Thank you for coming again. Are you ready to order?" "Well, I'll have a draft beer for now." "But Henry, don't you feel embarrassed working here out of pity from your sister and her husband?" George smirked at me as he said this. It seems he thought I was working part-time here because we had met 3 weeks in a row. Explaining the situation felt tedious, so I just went along with it. As usual, George started bragging about his job while sipping his beer. "Actually, I'm going to France for work next year. So, starting next month, I might not be able to come here as often." "Oh, really?" "I speak not only Japanese and English, but also French, German, and Chinese. An elite employee at a major trading company needs to be that proficient. It's probably a world unimaginable to a part-timer like you." Being trilingual myself, I was genuinely impressed by George's claim of speaking 5 languages. "That's impressive." I praised him, which pleased George and prompted him to order lots of food and drink. Getting happily drunk before leaving the restaurant about 2 hours later. As I was cleaning up George's leftovers, Emily voiced her concern. "Are you all right? It seemed like he was really bothering you again." "He started coming here about 3 months ago, and honestly, Nate and I don't know how to handle him. But we can't exactly tell him not to come either." "Don't worry about me. I just go with the flow." Besides, George said he'll be coming less frequently from next month due to work, Emily furrowed her brows but said, "If you say so." Dealing with George was indeed stressful, but I thought it would only be for a little while longer. Then, one day, towards the end of summer break, George made me an offer. "Hey Henry, I bet you're free tomorrow, right? There's a mixer with some nurses, come with me." I was taken aback by the unexpected invitation, but George, already drunk, kept insisting, "Do you know how much money I've spent at this place?" While pounding the table. Fearing he might cause more trouble for Emily and Nate, I reluctantly agreed. Satisfied with my agreement, George said, "All right, see you tomorrow," and left the restaurant cheerfully. I had planned to help out at the restaurant the next night, but I couldn't back out of the promise now. When I told Nate and Emily in the kitchen about how I ended up being invited to the mixer, they were both shocked. "Wow. George really is a selfish person." "I'm speechless," Emily said, exasperated. "Sorry about not being able to help out tomorrow like I planned," I said. "Don't worry about the restaurant. It's been calmer lately, and we'll manage. Besides, it's a mixer, Henry. You should go and have fun. I bet you'll meet someone special." Nate encouraged me. Indeed, it might be a good opportunity. After not having a girlfriend for over 10 years, I had been thinking it was time to meet someone new. Taking Nate's advice, I decided to give the mixer my best shot. I thanked Emily and Nate and worked enthusiastically that night. The next day, I headed to the Italian bar George had specified. But as soon as I entered, I was taken aback. George had told me, even though it's a bar, it's a proper place, so wear a suit, but I was the only one who showed up in a suit. The bar had a casual atmosphere, and everyone else was in their regular clothes. The bar, known for its fusion of Italian and Japanese cuisine, had a decor that mixed both styles. Wine glasses made of lacquerware and Venetian glass vases with artificial cherry blossoms decorated the interior, giving it a playful touch. Usually, I would have enjoyed such a setting, but I felt out of place in my formal attire. Looking around, I saw George and the other participants already seated at a round table. Although I had arrived 10 minutes before the appointed time, I felt something was off. As I stood there, puzzled, George spotted me, pointed, and started laughing. "Henry. Come on, man. I get that you're excited about the mixer, but showing up 20 minutes late in a suit? That's a fail for a grown-up." George said that and laughed exaggeratedly by himself. At that moment, I realized George's true intention. He had deliberately told me to wear inappropriate attire and given me the wrong meeting time. He probably invited me to the mixer just to make a fool out of me. As I stood there in shock, one of the female participants spoke up. "No, not at all. I think his suit looks very nice." "And George, it's not right to point and laugh at someone at a fun gathering," she said sharply. Chastised by the woman, George looked embarrassed and began to defend himself. "Come on, Laura. I was just joking a bit. Henry. Just take a seat. It's your fault for being late in the first place." It seemed George didn't like being reprimanded by Laura. He glared at me, almost as if he was taking out his frustration. Perhaps Laura was the one he had his eye on tonight. Indeed, she was the most beautiful among the 5 female participants. She had big, well-defined eyes, a sculpted face, and curly brown hair, giving her an exotic allure. Her brightly colored dress suited her perfectly. "Sorry," I said, bowing my head to George. Seeing an empty seat next to Laura, I quickly sat down beside her and thanked her. "Thank you for earlier. I felt a bit out of place in my suit, but your support helped." She smiled warmly at me. "You're welcome. It really suits you. I'm Laura. Nice to meet you. I'm Henry. Nice to meet you too." The introductions had already been done before I arrived, and the participants were chatting freely. So, I decided to enjoy my meal while talking with Laura. Through our conversation, I learned that Laura was 30 years old and worked as a nurse at X hospital. Her clear and confident way of speaking made me like her naturally. Despite her stunning looks, she was approachable and kind, embodying the ideal qualities of a nurse. Suddenly, George moved his chair to forcibly squeeze in between Laura and me. He seemed determined to talk to her. "Laura, you shouldn't waste your time talking to Henry." "George, I already told you to stop looking down on people like that." However, Laura seemed uninterested in engaging with George. She likely disliked how he constantly belittled me. In fact, when I arrived late, none of the other members had laughed at me like George did, and now George was isolated in the group. Realizing this, George became more desperate to put me down. Laura, he's 38 and working part-time at his sister's restaurant. Don't you think I'm way more reliable than him? He insisted. Annoyed by his words, I was about to retort. But just then, there was a loud crash in the bar, and I instinctively looked towards the sound. To my shock, there was a woman collapsed on the floor, with her husband crouched beside her, panicking. The bar staff were trying to communicate with him, but since he was a foreigner, they couldn't understand each other. Seeing this, Laura said, "George, you're a multilingual, right? Can't you help translate?" George hesitated but replied weakly, "Of course," and approached the foreign man. The man, who seemed to be in his 50s, started speaking in heavily accented English, influenced by his native French. However, the accent was too strong for George to understand clearly. Even though he went to translate, George stood there bewildered, saying, "I don't understand." Unable to watch any longer, I stood up and moved beside George. George snapped, "Stay out of this." Ignoring him, I addressed the man in French, "What happened?" The man, relieved, began to explain the details in French. He said that his wife felt unwell after drinking wine and needed an ambulance immediately. I translated this to the female staff, who promptly called 119, saying, "Thank you so much." Laura then approached and offered, "I'm a nurse, so I can help if needed." The staff, reassured by having a medical professional on hand, handed the phone to Laura. While Laura communicated with the emergency services, I continued to translate the man's explanations to her. "Where are you, and what's the emergency?" "We're at an Italian bar, and a female foreigner is feeling unwell. She skipped her usual blood pressure medication this morning before going to the hot springs. According to her husband, she spent a long time in the hot springs, and after drinking a glass of wine at the bar, she felt unwell and collapsed from her chair." Hearing this, Laura relayed the woman's medical history and situation to the paramedics. While waiting for the ambulance, Laura asked the staff for something to place under the woman to ensure her safety. The staff quickly brought a mattress from the office room. Laura and I moved the woman's body onto the mattress, and Laura positioned her in the recovery position to secure her airway. I'm laying her on her side to keep her airway open. I immediately translated Laura's words to the husband. He understood the situation and, with tears in his eyes, repeatedly said, "Thank you." Soon, the ambulance arrived, and the woman was swiftly transported to the hospital. As I translated Laura's words to the husband, the bar quieted down as if a storm had passed. Laura and I were thanked by all the bar staff, who said, "You saved us," as we headed back to the table where the mixer was taking place. There, George, who had been keeping a low profile until now, nervously sweating, asked me, "Henry, who are you?" "Actually, I'm a French language lecturer and recently became an associate professor." An associate professor. He had always looked down on me, thinking I was just a part-timer, never imagining I was an associate professor. The other participants praised me, saying, "That's amazing. You spoke French so fluently, Henry." It was really impressive. "No, not at all. Laura, you were amazing as well. As expected of a nurse." As we exchanged compliments, the other participants started clapping and cheering, saying, "You two make a great team." I never expected things to turn out this way. Feeling embarrassed, I scratched my head, blushing. While Laura and I received applause for our teamwork, George suddenly stood up roughly and said, "I'm leaving," before storming out of the bar. For a moment, the room fell silent due to George's abrupt departure. One of George's colleagues then spoke up. George probably didn't like seeing Henry speak French better than him. He has a big ego and always wants to look good. But his practical language skills aren't that great. Honestly, I'm not even sure if he really is multilingual. Everyone nodded in agreement with the colleague's assessment. I had the same impression. George always needed to be the center of attention. Today, he invited me with the intention of belittling me, but ended up embarrassing himself instead. Thinking about it, George seemed rather pitiable. The rest of the evening went smoothly, and we enjoyed the mixer with smiles all around. I exchanged contact information with Laura, making the night a great success. After that mixer, Laura and I started dating. I had found her attractive and wonderful from the moment we met, but our shared experience of contacting the paramedics brought us closer together. When I confessed my feelings, she told me, "Watching you handle everything so fluently in French, I was instantly captivated. It's never happened to me before." Now that I'm dating such an amazing woman, I feel genuinely grateful to George for providing the opportunity. However, since that mixer, George hasn't visited Emily in Nate's restaurant, so I haven't seen him to express my thanks. I wondered if he was busy preparing for his business trip to France, but it seems that story was just another fabrication. In hindsight, it seems belittling me at Emily's restaurant was the only thing that gave George a sense of superiority. By the way, the French couple we encountered that night at the mixer visited the bar again once the wife had recovered. The husband left a letter for me with the staff before they returned to France. The organizer of the mixer contacted me, and we arranged a meeting where he handed me the letter. Nervously, I opened it to find a photo of the smiling couple. "Thank you so much for your help the other day. Thanks to your translation, my wife has fully recovered. We also want to thank your nurse girlfriend again. Please, both of you come visit us in France. My wife and I would love to show you around." I showed the letter to Laura, and she smiled with joy. They thought we were a couple back then. I've decided. Our honeymoon destination should be France. Wait, Laura, does that mean? I asked, and Laura, blushing, gently took my hand. I don't want to let go of this hand. I thought instinctively, and with that momentum, I proposed to her, "Marry me." 1 year after meeting Laura. Laura and I were at Charles de Gaulle Airport together. In the distance, we saw the couple waving at us. Seeing them, Laura smiled and waved back, her engagement ring sparkling as if predicting the wonderful journey that was about to begin. "Hey, do you want to go for another drink? I didn't get to drink much, and I kind of feel like getting a little tipsy. Is that okay?" I was tired. Even though I was tired. With those sultry eyes looking at me, there's no way I could say no. I nodded slightly and entered a nearby bar with her. "My name is Travis, I'm 30 years old. As a physical therapist, I am responsible for my patients' rehabilitation. I perform treatments and support recovery for patients whose physical functions have been impaired by injury or illness, aiming to maintain and improve their abilities. I think about how to approach each case to help their bodies recover as much as possible. I plan the treatment, observe their reactions, and adjust my methods. It's a very rewarding job." During a break, while considering an approach for a patient who had ankle surgery, I felt a jolt on my shoulder. "Hey! Did you watch the boxing match yesterday? It was awesome." A guy talking to me while pretending to shadowbox was my coworker Tyler, who is the same age as me. "No, I didn't. My shoulder hurts, so take it easy." When I responded curtly, Tyler started acting up. "Oh, seriously? Just a light tap hurts? You need to train more." Though maybe I'm just getting stronger. Tyler can be annoying when he's like this, so I decided to ignore him. Still, Tyler is the kind of guy who doesn't let up. I started going to a martial arts gym recently. See, he starts talking even if I don't ask. They said I have a good sense of it. I'll get strong quickly. If someone scary bothers you, I'll protect you. You look pretty weak, after all. I finished my lunch and stood up. "Alright, then protect me if Director Owen bothers me," I said, starting to walk back to work even though there was some break time left. From behind, Tyler yelled, "That's not what I meant by scary." Even I can't defy Director Owen, making the other staff laugh. I don't like watching or doing martial arts. I can't stand seeing people in pain. That's why, in my rehabilitation, I carefully adjust the pressure and approach to ensure it doesn't cause much pain to my patients. Despite that, Tyler keeps inviting me to the martial arts gym, but I always politely decline. Maybe it's because we're the same age and he finds it easy to approach me, or maybe I'm just his target for teasing. I don't know, but Tyler often messes with me. He's probably a good guy at heart, but our hobbies don't match at all, so I wish he'd leave me alone. "Travis! Wanna go to a mixer?" Here he comes again. And a mixer, of all things. "No." I frowned and gave a one-word response. "Yeah, I thought so. That's why I'm inviting someone else." Tyler said with a peace sign and a smile. Then why ask me? Without showing any disappointment, I asked. Out of courtesy? If you were really interested, I'd ask them to add another person, Tyler replied, making me smile a bit. No need. I'm really not interested at all. With that, Tyler started getting excited with the other guys going to the mixer. A few days later, Tyler came up to me at work with a desperate look, hands clasped together. Please, Travis. Help me out. I gave him a puzzled look. Today's the mixer, but Mason caught a cold and can't make it. I need you to come. There are 3 of girl. So I need to bring 3 guys too, or it'll be rude. Honestly, I really don't want to go. As I frowned and stayed silent, Tyler added, they're nurses. Not from our hospital, but pediatric nurses. I fell in love at first sight when I took my sister's kid to the hospital. My sister worked hard to set this up, it's really important. Apparently, Tyler's sister is friends with the receptionist at the pediatric clinic, and she set up the mixer for him. Tyler once said his sister is scary, so he must have worked hard for this. Or rather, his sister did. I can't just brush this off. I'll bring everyone down. It's not that I'm not interested in women. I do want a girlfriend, and I want to get married. But I absolutely hate the vibe of mixers where you meet people for the first time. I'm shy, and there's no way I can keep up with the atmosphere or hold a conversation. Even though I said this to refuse, Tyler kept pleading, saying things like I'll keep the mood up and I won't let you down. Until I finally gave in. I'm really in my scruffy everyday clothes today. Is that okay? When I said that, Tyler's face lit up. It's fine. You're coming. Awesome. Thanks, Travis, he said and left. I got dragged into a hassle. Well, I'm a plain guy with plain looks and a plain personality. It's the trifecta. The women probably wouldn't be interested in me, and I'll find a way to leave early with some excuse. With that mindset, I focused on my work. After work, I walked into the locker room feeling heavy-hearted, and Tyler handed me a paper bag. I peeked inside and saw clothes. What's these? I asked, and Tyler gave a clumsy wink. I invited you last minute, so I bought this during lunch. Here, take it and change. Inside was a decent shirt and pants, not quite a suit but relatively smart. I can't accept this. I'll wash and return them. I said, but Tyler smiled and said, it's fine, they're a different size. True, I'm 5 feet 7 inches. Tyler, who's 6 foot, is quite a bit taller. When I offered to pay, he refused that too. I really appreciate it today. The venue is a pretty fancy private restaurant, and you'd feel out of place in scruffy clothes. So, I gratefully accepted and tried them on, and they fit perfectly. Tyler is unnecessarily thoughtful in these things. Another coworker, also dressed nicely, joined us, and we arrived at the mixer venue. It was a formal place, part of a high-end chain. If I had worn my scruffy clothes, I might have been kicked out before entering. Even dressed in a nice shirt, I didn't really want to be there. We were shown to our seats and waited nervously for the women to arrive. The seating was at a sunken, heated table with colorful woven straw mats, but I ended up sitting cross-legged. Then the lattice door opened, and 3 elegantly dressed women walked in. I thought it would be rude to stare, so I kept looking at the floor, but when I glanced at the woman sitting in front of me, I was genuinely shocked. With large, clear eyes, a straight nose, and slightly plump lips with light lipstick, she was a beauty. She was the woman I met when I was hospitalized after an injury in high school. That was 13 years ago. There's no way she would remember. Why do I remember? Because I fell in love with her, left the hospital without confessing my feelings, and parted ways. Her smile has been stuck in my mind for these 13 years. We introduced ourselves. Her name was Amy. It matched the name I remembered. I honestly don't remember the other women, but it seemed like Tyler's crush was the woman sitting to Amy's left, as he kept talking to her. She seemed gentle and kind. I pretended to look down while watching Amy's every move. This makes me just a creepy guy. Tyler, of all people, noticed my nervousness. This guy's shy. He'll get used to it soon, so bear with him, and you're nervous. Should you down a strong drink? He teased. Please, just stop. Instead of bothering with me, Tyler should focus on approaching the woman he's interested in. I thought. He was probably nervous too. By paying attention to me, he was trying to keep his composure. Also, arguing back would only dampen the mood. I could only make small talk with Amy while dodging Tyler's teasing. As we passed the time like this, the lattice door to our private room suddenly opened. I thought it was a server, but it wasn't. A burly man was leaning against the door. With tan skin and a beard, his eyes were completely glazed over. Maybe because the room was warm or because he was drunk, his muscles bulged under his tight short-sleeved shirt, and his neck was thick. Everyone in the room was scared by his appearance. Is this the wrong room? Tyler barely managed to respond, yes. I thought he would leave, but... Oh. Wow, 3 beauties. Mind if I join, he said, stumbling in. He seemed very drunk. The man wedged himself between Amy and Tyler's crush and started talking to them. Tyler quietly left. He was probably going to get a server. I wanted to wait for that. But I couldn't wait for Tyler to return with a server. Because the man wrapped his arm around Amy's shoulder and brought his dirty face close to her beautiful one. Amy's face froze in fear, her eyes teary. The moment I saw that, I stood up and swiftly moved behind the man. Sorry. With that one word, I grabbed the arm around Amy's shoulder, pulled it towards me, and trapped the man's body with my legs. The man let out a strange noise. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologized while locking him in a hold he couldn't escape from. The man groaned in pain, trying to break free. I'm sorry. Please don't resist. It'll hurt more if you do. The man managed to gasp out, "Who are you?" But I just kept apologizing. I don't like seeing people in pain. As I held him in place, Tyler came rushing back. I brought someone from the same group and a server. Behind Tyler were 3 burly men who looked like the drunk guy and a flustered server. A few minutes later, the drunk man, sobered up by my hold, bowed his head. The other members of his group also bowed deeply. The group offered to cover our bill as an apology, and although we declined, they insisted, saying let us pay as a matter of honor. And took the bill, a bit unsteady. Just before leaving, the man turned back. I'm pretty strong in wrestling, but who are you really? I tried to brush it off, but Tyler looked at me and asked, Travis, what's going on? And everyone else's eyes were also on me. I couldn't dodge it any longer. I did judo for a long time. Until about my sophomore year of high school. To put it simply, I'm a black belt. Everyone gasped in admiration, and the drunk man said, I see, and left. As the room quieted down, Tyler muttered, You're amazing, then exclaimed excitedly. Wow! You're strong. That's awesome. I look lame now, even though I'm weaker than you. Seeing Tyler go from excitement to dejection, I looked at him. I think you're the amazing one, Tyler. Tyler's face looked a bit funny as if asking, How so? You got clothes for me and went out first to get help. It must have taken a lot of courage to act in that situation. I want to be as thoughtful as you. Tyler always bothers me because I usually stay by myself at work. While I prefer being alone, Tyler probably sees me as isolated. His frequent attempts to talk to me are his way of being kind. Since Tyler's crush was watching, I decided to give him some credit. Thanks for always looking out for me. You're kind and thoughtful, and because of you, work is fun. I hoped these words would make his crush think better of him. As I watched Tyler blush and get excited, I thought about that. Tyler managed to get us to a second party at a karaoke place. However, I declined, saying I was tired. I don't like singing, so karaoke is torture for me. But I did gather some courage. I exchanged contact info with Amy. I even managed to ask if she had a boyfriend, and she said no, so I hope to get closer to her slowly. Smiling to myself, I walked towards the station, hearing the sound of high heels approaching. I turned around to see Amy running towards me. Surprised, I ran to meet her. What's wrong? Did you forget something? I call out to Amy, who was breathing rough from running. She said, I remembered. My eyes widened. You were the judo boy I was assigned to as a nursing student, right? I was taken aback. I didn't realize it. I'm usually good with faces. You had a buzz cut back then. You noticed me, didn't you? Caught red-handed, I was surprised. I thought you were glancing at me. When I remembered, it all made sense. Your gaze wasn't one of interest but asking, "Do you remember me?" I wondered if I had such a wistful gaze. You managed to get your father's approval, right? She said, and I thanked her. Yes. Thanks to your encouragement back then. She laughed. I didn't do much. Hey, how about we go for another drink? I didn't get to drink much, and I skipped the second party. I kind of feel like getting a little tipsy. Is that okay? I was tired. But, with those sultry eyes looking at me, there's no way I could say no. I nodded slightly and entered a nearby bar with her. We sat at the counter, side by side. We were so close our shoulders almost touched. My heart was pounding loudly. Meeting like this, after more than 10 years. I was a student back then, so I was 21. She started the conversation, and I added, I was a sophomore in high school, hospitalized for a ligament rupture. Back then, while lying in the hospital bed, a scary nurse came in and introduced a cute woman with big eyes, saying she was a student and would be my caretaker. I agreed immediately. The dull hospital life felt suddenly brightened. She came to my room twice a day, in the morning and evening, to check my temperature, pulse, and blood pressure. Sometimes, she informed me of changes in my rehab schedule. It was just that, but she talked to me a bit each time, and we grew a little closer. As my discharge approached and I confessed I didn't want to leave, she listened to me kindly. I had been doing judo since I was a kid. My father had been practicing judo since he was a child, and in Japan, where judo originated, it's common for police officers to incorporate it into their training. Using his experience, he became a police officer. However, I had always disliked judo. I hated getting hurt and hurting others. With my father being strict, quitting judo was not an option. With no way out, I chose to become stronger. To avoid getting hurt by others. And to win quickly without hurting my opponent. Though I couldn't do that against my father, my desperate training led me to win tournaments and eventually earn a black belt. Just as I was being seen as a promising athlete, I got injured. In my rebellious phase, I pushed myself too hard during training with my father. Before he could stop me, I injured my leg, resulting in a severe ligament tear. This led to my first extended break from training. During this hospitalization, I genuinely felt I never wanted to do judo again. I feared that once I returned home, I would be pushed to aim higher while doing rehab. And pressured to become a police officer like my father. I didn't want to leave the hospital. I didn't want to go home. When I confessed this, Amy scolded me. "You're a guy. Don't be so pathetic." Expecting comfort, her unexpected words stunned me into silence. The tears that were about to fall receded. You have to become truly strong. You need to surpass your father. It's your life, isn't it? If you can't change yourself here, you'll live your life walking on the path your father laid out for you. Don't just go with the flow. I was dumbfounded. And I thought about it. A life running along the path my father had laid out. I clearly didn't want that. My face must have changed because Amy smiled. Do your best. I'm rooting for you. Fueled by her smile, I faced my father. After being discharged, I told my parents how I felt. That I wanted to retire from judo. That I hated the pain it caused me and others. That I wanted to become a physical therapist instead of a police officer. During my hospitalization, I received a lot of help from physical therapists. They considered my needs first and tailored my rehab plans. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to use the body I had trained through judo to help others. Though I stuttered at times, I confessed this, but my father wouldn't accept it. He said I couldn't quit judo until I defeated him. However, my ligament would take a long time to fully recover. When my mother, in tears, asked what would happen if I forced myself to train and ended up unable to walk, my father relented and gave me another condition. No half measures. If you really want to be a physical therapist, aim for one of these universities. The list he handed me included only top-tier schools. He wanted to see how serious I was. At the time, my grades were nowhere near good enough to even get halfway to those schools. It is as if there is a target that is visible but far away. But I studied frantically. With no judo practice, I had plenty of time. I dedicated all my time to studying. During that period, I set my sights on one university. Of course, the university I chose allowed me to study relevant subjects, and I also resonated with its philosophy. Motivated by my desire to attend this university, I studied intensely from the summer of my second year of high school and was accepted into my target university. I think my father eventually accepted my goal. To be honest, he might have feared that I would stop studying altogether. The snacks and drinks he occasionally brought me showed that he genuinely supported me. When I finished telling Amy about how I surpassed my father, she looked at me with teary eyes and said, "That's amazing, you really worked hard. That university is truly prestigious. I respect you," and she applauded me. "Your words changed me, Amy," I said, looking straight into her eyes. She fidgeted and said, "I feel bad, so I'll tell you, those words were like me talking to myself." Surprised, I listened as Amy shared her story. She revealed that becoming a nurse was also her parents' suggestion. With good benefits and plenty of job opportunities. It seemed like a practical choice, and she followed that path without much question. But because it wasn't her own decision, she started to slack off. Especially during her internship, she felt useless, made many mistakes, and was constantly reprimanded by her supervisor. Meeting me during those days, when she wished for time to pass quickly and the internship to end soon, she tried to prolong our conversations to avoid spending time at the nurse's station. While telling you those things, I was actually trying to motivate myself. I was questioning if I was just following the path my parents laid out for me. Watching you, I realized clearly that I didn't want that. I wanted to be someone who could empathize with patients. I decided to become a nurse not because my parents wanted me to, but because I chose to. The person I needed to overcome was myself. She looked radiant as she spoke. Since then, Amy had worked hard to motivate herself. Eventually, she was praised by her supervisor and sent off with confidence that she would become an excellent nurse. After finishing her story, Amy, perhaps thirsty, gulped down the rest of her cocktail. "I'm currently working in pediatrics, and every day is fulfilling. I have that time to thank for not giving up, and maybe it's partly thanks to you, Travis," she said with a smile while ordering another cocktail from the bartender. She looked so beautiful that I felt dizzy, not just because of the alcohol. She clinked her glass against mine. "I think it took a lot of courage for you to use your judo skills in that fancy restaurant. You seem to have hidden the fact that you practiced judo. But, thank you for saving me. I was really scared then." With her cheeks slightly flushed, she continued, "Travis, you were really cool," she said. I took a sip of my drink to soothe my dry throat and said, "I'm glad I could help you." For the first time, I felt that it was good I did judo. Amy laughed heartily. Encouraged by the alcohol, I gathered my courage. Meeting you again here feels like fate. So, even if it's just as friends, would you go out with me?" My heart was pounding so hard it felt like my whole body had become a heart. As she looked at me and smiled, Amy's face moved closer to mine. I felt a soft sensation on my cheek. Then Amy's face slowly moved away. She had a mischievous expression. "Actually, I'm quite impatient and proactive. I'm not planning on taking it slow, so be prepared," she declared with a wink. "If I don't step up my game, I won't be able to keep up with her." I vowed to become a reliable man. A few years later. One more time. My 3-year-old son, lying down and almost crying, shouted while looking at the ceiling. "Again?" "I'm getting tired, let's stop soon," I suggested, but he shook his head vigorously. "One more time." At that moment, Amy walked in. Okay, I brought snacks, so let's take a break," she said, and my son, forgetting about wanting another match, rushed to the less sweet muffins Amy had made. After being freed from my son, Amy laughed and said, "Good job, offering me a muffin." It's been 4 years since Amy and I got married. I struggled with the idea of teaching judo to my son, but deep down, judo is a fundamental part of me. It gave me the strength to protect. It also taught me patience. My explosive focus is thanks to judo. And most importantly, my self-confidence comes from having the strength that judo gave me. If I were just weak, I wouldn't have been able to endure Tyler's teasing. The soft heart instilled in me by judo gave me the strength to brush off Tyler's teasing. I want my son to develop that same mindset, so after discussing with Amy, we decided to teach our son judo. Unlike me, he's got a strong competitive spirit. He'll probably be good at judo. Dad would be happy. My father, now a doting grandfather, spoils my son with a soft gaze. It's hard to believe he was ever so scary. He got his competitive spirit from me. Amy said, smiling at our son. Her smile was dazzling. I placed my hand on Amy's swollen belly. I hope this one will be kind like me. Amy laughed heartily. Listening to her laughter echo through the small room, I realized how truly happy I was.